Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Social Venture Partners Dallas. Thank you for joining our segment of our Responds series called Legacy Responds. Social Venture Partners is an organization of engaged men and women who give their time, talent, and financial resources to grow the capacity of social enterprises, provide educational opportunities on how to grow individual impact, and convenes community-wide conversations and collectives for action. Before we introduce our panel, I would like to welcome SVP Dallas partner Ian Fuhrer, who is here representing his company, Morgan Stanley. We are grateful to Morgan Stanley for being the presenting sponsor of today's conversation. Your support helps us make these things possible. Ian, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Tony. Hi, my name is Ian Fuhrer. I'm a financial advisor at Morgan Stanley in Dallas, Texas, with almost 30 years of financial markets experience. And as Tony said, I am a proud SVP partner. Morgan Stanley and I are thrilled to be the title sponsor of today's Legacy Response event. Thank you, Tony, Sean, Danielle, Prisma, Emily, and the whole SVP team for all of the incredible work that you do and for the amazing programming like this event that you bring to us. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this event with Reagan, Cheryl, Julia, and Florencia. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Morgan Stanley, allow me to offer a very brief description. Founded in 1935, Morgan Stanley celebrated its 85th birthday this summer. We are one of the largest wealth management firms in the world, including the recent purchase of E-Trade and Eaton Vance. We manage $4.4 trillion of wealth and investment management client assets with 16,000 financial advisors. Our financial advisors deliver tailored solutions designed to help clients achieve their financial goals. We provide individuals, families, businesses, and institutions a wide variety of services, including brokerage and investment advisory services, financial and wealth planning, access to credit lending, cash management, annuities, insurance, and retirement services. With offices in 41 countries, the firm's 60,000 employees serve clients worldwide, including corporations, governments, institutions, and individuals. We are dedicated to providing clients the finest thinking, products, and services to help them achieve even the most challenging goals. Our standard of excellence is driven by our 5 core values, which are do the right thing, put clients first, lead with exceptional ideas, commit to diversity and inclusion, and give back. We are differentiated by the caliber of our diverse team. Our culture of access and inclusion has built our legacy and shapes our future, helping to strengthen our business and bring value to our clients. Giving back is a central part of our culture globally. We live that commitment through long-lasting partnerships, community-based delivery, and engaging our employees. Last year, our employees registered 1.67 million volunteer service hours across 542 cities in 41 countries. All of this directly relates to legacy, not only for Morgan Stanley, but also for all of our clients and their families. The description of today's Legacy Respond event says, we are invited to recall what seeds were sown by those who came before, what foundations were constructed for us, and to remember that some obligations are not a burden, but a joy. Legacy is important to the work that financial advisors like my Morgan Stanley colleagues and I do every day with our clients. Our commitment to building, preserving, and managing the wealth of our clients forms the foundation of everything we do. Success is defined by our clients, but it's our job to guide our clients through life's uncertainties. Legacy planning is a term we use every day with our clients. We discuss estate planning, philanthropic goals, succession planning, family mission statements, educating the next generation, and socially conscious investments, also known as ESG. So why does this matter? Because as people age, we become less concerned with wealth and more concerned with empowering the next generation. Would you agree that your parents have been influential in your life? Would you agree that your grandparents have been influential in your life? Many people, however, can't remember their great-grandparents, which is a powerful reminder that even family members fade. There are a lot of tools to make sure that your money is working for you long after you've departed. Wealth is not a financial condition. Wealth is an emotional condition. Think about how you can use your wealth to create legacy. Do you want to give your wealth to your family or keep it from them? Wealth is not a performance relative to a benchmark. Legacy planning is about helping families carry on traditions. Legacy takes on immortality, and it is how we live on after death. It is a gift. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Tony so we can get to the great discussion with Reagan, Cheryl, Julia, and Florencia. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ian. We really appreciate you and appreciate the support of Morgan Stanley. At Social Venture Partners, all we see is potential. We believe that each person is given certain gifts and opportunities, and the capacity to grow those gifts is endless and for greater good. These women have taken the gifts that have been given them, made them their own, and have offered them to the world with an increase. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome the panel. First, I welcome Cheryl Jackson, author, speaker, entrepreneur, and founder of Minnie's Food Pantry, and my dear friend. I welcome Reagan Horchow, community leader, chair of Early Matters Dallas, and I'm so proud that she is an SVP partner. We welcome Julia Sands, a trustee of the Rosewood Foundation, and we welcome Florencia Velasco Fortner, president and CEO of the Concilio. I was sharing with the women earlier as we were prepping for this that I grew up with 4 sisters, so I am simultaneously very comfortable and also having some PTSD about the possibilities of what might happen. But I am honored to welcome this panel of outstanding women, particularly as we celebrate the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage, particularly for some women who got the right to vote, white women. And we are grateful for the work and the efforts that all of these women do on behalf of our community. So we're going to get right to the conversation. I want to start with Cheryl Jackson. I want to invite you to speak a few words about how you started and why you named Minnie's Food Pantry after your mother. Go for it, Cheryl.
Thank you, Tony, for the invite, and I'm honored to be here. I started Minnie's Food Pantry because there was a point in my life where my husband and I collectively worked 5 jobs and we couldn't put a decent meal on the table. So I applied for food stamps. It was the most horrific experience ever. Life got better for me, and then my father died suddenly on Father's Day weekend. I went into a 3-year depression, got down to 108 pounds, and my mother, whose name was Minnie, walked over into my house. We lived across the street, and she said, "You're going to die if you don't get up and do something." I looked at her with tears in my eyes, and I said, "You're all I have left. I just want the world to know your name." And so I started feeding people the way I wanted to be fed up underneath my mom's name, whose name was Minnie. So Minnie's Food Pantry was named after my amazing mother.
And how long ago was that, Cheryl?
Oh, I'm sorry, Tony. That was almost 13 years ago. We started with just 2 cans of corn in a little 500 square foot building. Now we have four locations in 3 states, and we're in 28,000 square feet. And we're about to build right across the street from where my mother and I grew up. We purchased the land in Dallas. So I'm so excited about it.
Congratulations on all that hard work. And boy, I know it was hard work to get you to this point. And we are very proud of what you've accomplished. Thank you.
Thank you.
Julia, I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about, you serve as the treasurer of the Rosewood Foundation. Your grandmother, Carolyn Rose Hunt, was in her 50s before she went into business. Among many other things, she was the founder of the mansion on Turtle Creek, where I'd been known to have a few drinks in my 30-some years in Dallas. What does the foundation that she started do, and what is a trustee's role in it? What is your role in it?
Thank you, Tony. First of all, I just want to say I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today and to share a bit about my grandmother and about my role in the foundation. As you said, my grandmother was in her 50s before she really got involved in the business world. Before that, she was busy raising 5 children and volunteering in the philanthropy world. It wasn't business first and all else second. It was family and giving back and then business. And so I think that value of service to our community was ingrained in the Rosewood Corporation from its inception. The Rosewood Foundation still focuses on giving back in the community in which we are located in Dallas. And we focus on initiatives that affect and improve the quality of all of our community members' lives. Early childhood education, housing services, healthcare services, the environment, the arts, mental health services, food insecurity. And we also have a successful employee matching program, which funds organizations in our community and beyond. I serve as a trustee for the Rosewood Foundation and also on the grants committee, where I'm involved in budgeting for the foundation and allocating funds. Along with Lynn Fisher, the foundation's vice president, I visited over 50 organizations in my first year on the foundation. So I could truly understand the importance of giving back and the history and longstanding partnerships that we have had with organizations in our community.
Julia, I know I didn't prep you for this question, but do you mind, how old were you when you started to take some responsibility at the foundation, and why did you even bother? Why did you say yes? Why didn't you just go and enjoy your life? Not that you're not.
I believe I was 27 and I was at a little bit of a crossroads in what I wanted to do with my professional career. I was in commercial real estate for a little bit and didn't love that. With Stream Realty, they're a great company, but it wasn't for me. And then I was actually going to the Art Institute for a little bit, and there were some meetings that I was not privy to, and I was called in to a meeting that I didn't really know what it was about and was asked to serve on the foundation. And it really, I think, was kind of a God thing. I studied sociology in college. It was the only major that I could envision myself like really hunkering down and devoting myself to. I loved it. And I thought about getting involved in nonprofit work on the flip side, but it's way more fun to give away money than to ask for it. So it's been fantastic. It is one of the most important things to me in my life, my role on this foundation. And I'm really grateful for it.
I feel like I owe you a bit of an apology immediately, because as soon as Cheryl heard that your foundation gives money to food insecurity, I know she's going to make the big ask. So you have to be prepared for that. But that's why Cheryl.
Connect with her. Yes, please.
Right. Florencia, I'm going to turn this one to you and ask you to introduce your organization. In a recent conversation that we had, you shared with me a little bit about your family and your early years. The organization that you lead boasts that you have impacted 60,000+ families. You have 35 years of serving the community and had raised over $25 million to enrich the education and quality of life of children in North Texas. How did your parents influence you to do this work that you're doing?
Hi, thank you, Tony. It's an honor to be here among these amazing women. Thank you for having me. So my parents are the only reason why I am here today. And I am so passionate about the work that we do at the Concilio, because I see my parents in the parents we help, and I see myself in their children. My mom had a 3rd grade education. My dad never went to school. He started working when he was 5 years old. And we immigrated into the United States when I was 6 years old, because we I was losing brothers and sisters to malnutrition, lack of healthcare. My mom had 16 pregnancies, and there's only 6 of us alive today. And it's that sacrifice that my parents made and continue to make throughout their lives, so that we would have a better shot at life. And the families that we work with at the Concilio, we focus primarily on parents. We believe that the best investment we can make in children is investing in their parents. And we believe that if the parent is engaged, the child will succeed. And that's proven by so many research that is out there. And for me, it's about, the legacy that my mom and dad left behind. My dad used to say this: I don't have money to leave you behind, but I do have my heart and everything that's in it that belongs to you. And he and my mom had an extraordinary amount of wealth in love, grace, mercy, and their willingness to sacrifice everything they had for others.
That's extraordinary. Thank you. Sometimes when I'm on Facebook and I see some of my cousins, the children of my cousins, and I see some of the comments that they make, and I think, you have no memory at all of the sacrifice that your great grandparents made for you to have this life that you have, or you couldn't possibly make a comment like that. You just have no memory. And so part of the whole experience, I think, of, we believe at Social Venture Partners that innovation can solve a lot of the social problems of the world, and that we have to have an innovative approach. And that is true. But without the anchor of the values as your North Star, it is hard to create new processes and innovations to move things forward. What would you say you keep as the North Star for your organization to keep it moving forward?
Love, sacrifice, and the ability to just keep on going and not give up. And Tony, I do want to add this to all of SVP, that the reason why the Concilio has a parent engagement program is because of Social Venture Partners. SVP in 2002 made it possible for us to be able to help all these thousands of families that we've helped in parental engagement. So thank you.
You are very kind to say that and acknowledge that. And I know that means a lot to our partners who give an awful lot to this work. So thank you for that. Speaking of our partners, I'm going to ask Reagan to respond to this. In my research for this panel, I had the great opportunity to learn a bit about your father through some New York Times articles, and obviously through his obituary. He just passed away recently this year. Our sympathy to you and the loss of your dad. He led an extraordinary life as an entrepreneur, and then as an award-winning Broadway producer. Business and creativity just exploded from him. What was it like to grow up with a creative genius, and did you even realize it at the time? How did he influence the work that you do?
Well, thank you, Tony. I'm honored to be a part of this panel with these incredible women. I'm not sure we realized what Dad was doing when he was doing it, because around the dinner table, he was just reporting on his day at work. And as a young person, I didn't realize that starting a mail order catalog was craziness at the time he did it. But what happened around our table was that we had all sorts of people from all over the world who would, be at dinner. And so he would have people that he worked with from India. I remember Mr. Sarna coming, and Mr. Sarna wore a turban and he did yoga, and he was very strange and fascinating. And, we had au pair girls that cared for us in the evening when Mom and Dad were traveling, and they were from Italy. And so what he brought to us was an awareness of all sorts of different people and different experiences, and that they all had value. By example, he worked hard, and my mom, reported on her day, which involved, way back in the day, driving Meals on Wheels and volunteering. And so and Dad didn't, as I grew up until I was actually out of college, Dad was just working, and he was giving back in the ways that he knew how to give back. And he wouldn't have been named a philanthropist back in that day, but he was giving at what he felt was a significant way, and demonstrating to us that that was important. So no, I didn't realize I was living with a creative genius at the time, but obviously I've come to appreciate all that he did and all of the leaps that he made. And, so a nod to all of the entrepreneurs who are members of SVP. Multiple times in his life, he made leaps that fortunately for him paid off, not always, but, and I'm the great beneficiary of his taking those leaps.
You picked up so much of, you are a phenomenal leader in the community. Do you think of yourself as an entrepreneur? Do you think of yourself as a creative? How do you think about him in relationship to the work that you do now?
Well, I've attempted to be an entrepreneur in a little business venture that was not successful, but from which I learned a ton. I think the influence that my dad had on me and my work in the community is my dad was a connector, and anybody who knew him knew that. He collected things, and he collected people, and he connected people. And if I add value in the community, it is along those lines, which is connecting people, connecting projects, connecting organizations, and helping create more impact, because we do better when we work together than we work in silos. And so I definitely learned that from him, that connecting people has great power.
That is really an extraordinary lesson to learn, and one that I chat with a lot of young folks about. You know, we have these incredible networks of people that we are connected to, but yet we rarely leverage them for good. We are afraid to ask people to join us in the causes that we are working on, and that is such a critical mistake, because most people in our networks really want to do something. They just wait for the invitation. And I have been the beneficiary, Social Venture Partners has been the beneficiary of your willingness to connect people from your network to the causes that are so important to us. That piece alone of a legacy, just leveraging a network for good, is an extraordinary gift to the world. And I thank you for that and for what you've done for SVP through your network. Cheryl, I'm going to throw it back to you. You know, I had the distinct and incredible pleasure of actually getting to know your mother before her sudden and untimely death. And, you know, it was always a great gift to be in her presence. I see her spirit in you, of course, every day, and have known you for a very long time. I knew you back in the day when you weren't sure that you were going to be able to keep the doors of the food pantry open because you couldn't pay the electric bill. But yet you never stopped saying that one day you would have Oprah Winfrey on your stage. And, you know, I used to look at you like, she might be a little crazy on this one. But there you were, there I was sitting 10 years later in the audience, and there's Oprah Winfrey on your stage, speaking your mother's name and raising money for the food pantry. And I was like, not only is Cheryl an incredible activator, but she is a visionary and a prophet. So I just, you know, have to bow to you and give you lots of props. And I just want to know where did the inspiration come from to keep the drive going?
You know, it came from my mother, and it also came from you, Tony. We just talk about people connecting people. What I realized in the African American community is that we have a lot of philanthropists. The problem in the African American community is they didn't know how to put the foundation together, which I did not know how to do until I met you. You came and walked into my office and you say, I see what you're doing here. And you established a network of people and put me together a board. And then you gave me the wisdom that I needed to propel Minnie's Food Pantry to what it needed to be. And so I would be remiss without saying thank you, because you was my first chair, and everything that I learned in the beginning of this nonprofit life, I learned it from you. All I did for the first 2 years was just said, I have to feed the hungry. And it didn't matter how I got the food or what, I just knew people were hungry. And you came in and said, no, you need a board, you need a budget, you need, you know, and all of those things that, you know, we as African Americans, we had no knowledge of. And so I'm now consulting with people as well. But it came from my mom. The tenacity that she gave me, that, and my parents, who would say, you can do anything you wanted to do. And I knew that there were two people in my life. My mother, she birthed me, and I always said that. And then I said, Oprah Winfrey gave me life when I was in the lowest stages and wanted to literally kill myself from depression of my father dying. So I said, well, I already got my mother. She's going to help me. But now I need Oprah, because these are the two women who I put life together with. So I know that you laughed at me and looked at me like I was crazy all those years, which is why when Oprah Winfrey said yes, she would finally come and be my speaker, you were the first person that I called, because I said he never really believed me. And I wanted you to have a front row seat, not only because of that, but also because I wanted to express my gratitude for you getting me set up properly so that Oprah Winfrey would say yes.
Well, you're very kind to show any gratitude to me, but you know, being your board chair, I learned a great deal. When there are superstars at the helm like you, the best thing that a board chair can do is just shut up and sit back and get out of your way, which is what I tried to do. And I think you created something really incredible from our time together. So I am grateful for that. When you think back on, you know, the values, it's always, as we talk about, the anchor for entrepreneurs is not only their willingness and their insatiable attitude for ideation and futuristic thinking, but there's a solid foundation that allows them to soar. What would you say is one core value that your mom passed on to you that allowed you to soar? How would you identify a core value?
Oh my gosh, there were so many values she instilled in us, but that word about dignity, that was one of the values, because she said everybody needs to be served with dignity. And she's like, don't ever judge anybody, because you don't know, tomorrow it could be you. So that's why we started rolling out the red carpet when we served everybody. And if someone looked down on someone, I mean, I fired probably 3 volunteers in the history of Minnie's because of how they treated someone that was in need. And so I just think that the platform in which my mother taught us as children to serve, and to all the other panelists' point, we didn't know we were being trained. I personally didn't know I was being trained for this moment until I look back and start seeing all the different things that I could hear my mother's voice. And I can hear me in my mother's voice when I'm talking to our volunteers saying, no, don't look at them. Don't degrade someone. Stay humble. So it's that always stay humble and kind, and always treat people with dignity, integrity, and respect, because tomorrow it could be you. And in this situation where COVID is, I mean, that's what's happening. The donors who have donated are been inspirational and getting hundreds of thousands of dollars donated to our organization. Tony, they now sit here across from me in my office and say, I need food. And that right there, they would always say to me, you said one day it could be us. And they said, that's all I hear ringing in my head. And now it's me. But I know there's a place I can go to that I won't feel ashamed. And for that, I'm grateful for my mother.
You know, food pantries during COVID, you had to be on the front lines, and your workers had to be on the front lines. You had to be there handing out the food. How on earth did you make the pivot to keep going and keep working and making sure that people who were hungry in masses kept getting food?
The first interview I did, it was Channel 4, and I had 60 boxes of cereal on my shelf. When they finished, they said, how will you feed this community? And I always say, it's really not about me. It's about God. His name is on the line. And I said, so I'll figure it out. And then I got a call right when they turned off the cameras from PISD saying, we will not have a community food partner. There's 16,000 kids in Plano that will need help. And I said, I'll help you. And I did not know. And they turned the cameras back on without me knowing. And she goes, how will you help? And literally, me in my tears, I just started crying and saying, I know someone will hear me. Someone will come to our rescue. And we literally went from serving 4 days a week with people walking in and walking a red carpet to we went remotely. So they have to drive through. And then we had to do 7 days a week. So I had to challenge my staff. I called us all in a team huddle. I said, I understand if you don't want, because my husband has diabetes. So the doctors literally told me that I should shut down or go stay in a hotel. My son called me crying saying, please, mom, just shut it down. It's not worth dad dying and you catching COVID. And so it was a gut check, and it still is a gut check every single day for me, because we've gone from serving 5,000 individuals to 33,000 last month. 33,000. And last year we served 2,000 people for Thanksgiving. We have 3,600 people signed up on our Thanksgiving giveaway, and 450 people signed up for our Veterans Thanksgiving giveaway. That's over 4,000 turkeys that I got to go around and find some turkeys. So I'm so glad Julia's on this call, and all the others, but especially Julia.
I can't wait for a long-standing partnership with you, Cheryl.
Yes, I feel that. I feel that. So it's been challenging. It's still challenging because it feels like we're about to go to round 2. And we were blessed that we had Mark Cuban. They donated to Shift Smart, or Get Shift Done. It's a nonprofit that gave us 35 employees. So we went from 17 employees to 52 every day. They just ended that on the 15th, which is this month. And so now I'm trying to raise money to have some people be able to do it, because you can't have a lot of volunteers coming in. You've got to know who's here. And, so that if they got sick, we put them strategically in different areas. So if someone called in sick, what's the problem? And we get that group tested. Now we don't even have the funding for those 35. They will end Sunday, and I'm literally scrambling. We're usually off at least on Tuesdays now. We're in-house working today, trying to get these 4,000 boxes, because I'm at a crossroads again. It's challenging.
Well, Cheryl, we know that the values that you were reared with certainly come up every step of the way and allow you to get done what you need to get done. And we know that you will, and hopefully some folks in our audience will be able to step up and support the work that you're doing as well. Julia, I want to shift now back to you on that question. article after article talked about your core grandmother's value was integrity and that it permeated her whole life and her business endeavors. How do you see that being lived out in the ongoing work of her foundation, that word integrity, and in your own life? And then I want to ask you a follow-up question about, has COVID and the racial reckoning, has that changed the way the foundation thinks about things? But let's talk about that value first.
Thank you for that question, Tony. When I reflect on who my grandmother was and her core person, integrity is the first word that comes to mind for me. She truly believed in doing the right thing in business, in her personal relationships, and in relation to her community. Once she established the Rosewood Corporation, she never faltered to name integrity as the #1 core value. The Rosewood Foundation is really a reflection of the corporation's emphasis on the idea of integrity above all else. Our aim is to serve our community without regard for religion, sexual orientation, race, or gender, and certainly divorced of politics. For example, one of my very favorite organizations and one I'm involved with personally is Healing Hands Ministries, and they offer healthcare services to people regardless of their immigration status. In my own life, I aim to live up to my grandmother's values and how I treat people, how I give of my own personal time and resources, how I speak of people when they can't hear me. And finally, especially poignant at this time, I try to exercise my right to vote in favor of candidates who most represent those ideals of integrity, honesty, empathy, inclusion, and equality. And in terms of how the foundation has pivoted in this time of reckoning with in terms of race and systemic oppression in this country, we're listening and we are making an effort to give to different organizations that specifically bolster racial and cultural pride and food insecurity in this hard time with COVID, and healthcare services. And also the foundation bolstered its support of Family Compass, because I know we've all heard that rates of domestic violence have increased dramatically with this unprecedented time of stress. So we're really listening. We are trying to actively pivot. We initially boosted a big gift to North Texas Food Bank because of food insecurity. And then even with our own business entities, we quickly tried to pivot to helping out in any way we can. We have a contract manufacturing facility that started producing hand sanitizer that we then donated to first responders and hospital workers. We have a ranching and beef company that partnered with Mark Cuban and the Mavs Foundation and some local restaurants to feed hospital workers and donate some delicious meals to people working on the front lines. And also we have a plasma cutting facility that quickly pivoted to making face shields that we donated to first responders and hospital workers. So we really try to get boots on the ground and act quickly in this hard time for everybody.
We know that you all have done some great work, and you were very conscientious about stepping up to do some really extraordinary things pretty quickly. Some of those things we are grateful to Lynn Fisher for helping to make connection points from some of these response sessions and some of the things that we were talking about here to the work that you all are doing. So we are very grateful for that. Florencia, in a conversation that you and I had in preparation for this, you shared with me a wonderful kind of understanding that you came to in terms of, you know, how difficult it may be at sometimes to show up at meetings and feel like you're kind of alone, or you're the lone voice. Talk a little bit about how your family history helps prepare you for that and to show up differently in the sessions that you do.
So in 2017, I attended the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Summit with a delegation from Dallas. And we were meeting with our coordinator, Jerry Tello, and I was complaining about, I hate being the only woman. It's lonely being the only minority or the only Latina. And he looked at me, he's like, what are you talking about? You're not alone. I said, what do you mean? I know what I mean, I just met you. How would you know? And he said, your mom, your dad, your grandparents, and all your ancestors are always standing behind you. So when you show up, you're bringing them with you. And I just had this vision of like 50 Mexicans behind me, woohoo, you know, taking over the world in a good way. And I remember going to a meeting shortly after that. And again, I was the only woman. And so I just like took a deep breath and I'm like, I'm not the only one. I have, you know, my grandmother, my grandmothers, my great grandmothers, my mother. And I leaned in, and it was one of the best performances I had, because I got rid of I'm alone, because I wasn't. And I remember running home to my mom instead of that day after work, instead of driving home, I went to my mom. She was still with me at the time. And I remember telling her, Mom, you were in the meeting with me. You helped me nail it. And she just kind of rolled her eyes and thought I was crazy. But she reminded me of what my dad used to say, that you know, and how what he wanted to leave behind, it wasn't money, but he did have all this love and knowledge. And I remember then, you know, after that, really thinking about maybe the visual doesn't always work of having my parents and my ancestors behind me, but it's about how I honor what they left me with, and how now I can share that, not just with my daughter, but with all of the families in the concilio that we work with, and all of the people that are in my life. And, you know, there were like 5 things that I really remember, that just learning and wanting to honor my parents that way, because my mom and my dad are no longer with us. But, you know, love, I've already talked about love, you know, love for family, friends, and even love thy enemy is something that was really important to my parents, because that meant that you were going to treat everybody with the utmost dignity and respect, regardless of their station in life. You know, share your blessings. We really had nothing, they had nothing, but they were always willing to share their blessings. And they made me recognize, no matter, you know, if I believe that I have nothing, we always have something. And I remember clearly them not just saying that to me, but modeling by the way that they took people in, by the way that they gave the last that they had, not just to me, but to others. And then 3, live life with passion, laugh, dance, sing. Life is too short. And even when you think you have nothing, you have life, you have God, you have you. And then, you know, work hard and be proud of the work that you do. My dad used to tell me, if you sweep floors, be the best floor sweeper you can be, and have pride in it. And make sure that you look in every corner. Don't leave anything behind. Have pride. And I've taken that with me wherever I've gone. And then a saying that he used to say was "Ponte las pilas," which the direct translation is "put on the batteries," which doesn't really make a lot of sense, but it really stands for, you know, just like, you know, stand up, don't give up, figure out. Like if I had a problem and I would come to them and say, okay, this has happened. They were like, well, ponte las pilas, figure it out. Go out, and if you think hard, you put your mind to it, you will figure it out. And so I think in those ways, in so many other ways, but especially those 5 things are things that I've carried with me, and that I want to, you know, share with those that I come in contact with. And I hope that it's not just something I say, but it's just as importantly, what my parents did, they modeled it for me. They saw me doing it. I mean, I saw them doing it. And so that's what I want to leave. And that's the way that I want to honor my ancestors and all the sacrifices that they did. And the last thing I'll say about this is my mom used to tell me that her role was to stand as tall as she could, so that I can stand on her shoulders, so that I can see further than she ever did. And that is, you know, I'm short, so I mean, I'm going to try to stand as tall as I can, but hopefully it's more not physically, but because I want my daughter, my nephews, and others to be able to see further than I ever could.
Thank you, Florencia. That is very powerful. And I know that you have touched, your parents' legacy has touched through you hundreds and hundreds and thousands of kids' lives and families' lives. And that is really just an extraordinary witness of the power of story and the power of values and carrying it forward in the work that we do. Reagan, I want to ask you that question. What was the number one value that your family passed on to you that you rely on and you make manifest in your work? And as Florencia talked about her own daughter, you have daughters. Do you openly talk about legacy and values with them? Are you intentional about passing on the family stories?
Yes. So, I think what I tried to say before about my growing up is that, we were extremely comfortable, but didn't come into the ability to be true philanthropists until my dad sold his company. But always the message was activate around what you care about and then go do something. So, and the do something was everything from voting for sure, but also being activists. I remember being I think I was in 6th grade, licking stamps for President Carter, and just doing something. So, and then my dad's message to us was always to give something monetarily, give a little something and to the things you care about. And I was just going to say to Julia, I think it's hard to give away money because it's hard to know how to be impactful. And my dad and I used to have a tug of war around, do you identify just a few things and give in a big way, or do you give a lot across a lot of organizations? And we constantly would tug and war about that. And Dad would say, well, it's important to give, a little bit to a lot of places and to have an impact. And I would say, well, okay, I'm going to focus on the things that I care about. And as a family, we care about lots of things. So there's constantly that tug of war about how to give and make a difference, whether it's small amounts or big amounts. And it's hard. And it's hard to know how to do the right thing. But my dad's message was, well, just do it. Just do something. And he always, anybody that sat on a board with my dad, and we heard all sorts of funny stories after he died repeatedly about boards that he sat on. He didn't mince words, but his message always was to engage with your base, your alumni or whoever, and they should be giving a small amount immediately. A lot of schools, for example, would say, well, we can't really solicit our alum until they are out in the world and making a living. And he would say, no, they can all write a check for $5 and they need to, and that will grow over time. Anyway, so the message in our family was to do something, figure out what you care about and go work on that, whatever that is or whatever there are. And that's how I've kind of tried to go forward in my life. And yes, I do talk to my daughters. Fortunately, they were around. One of the benefits of COVID is we were all around when Dad was ailing, and we talked a lot about how you participate and how you give. And one of the things my dad did for my daughters was when each of them graduated from high school, he created a fund for them at the Dallas Foundation. And his charge was to them, figure out what to do with it so that you have impact. And I'm obviously grateful that he did that. But so the girls have money at their disposal. It's not a huge amount of money. It's a small fund, but nevertheless, it gives them the experience of figuring out, who to give to, how to give, at what amount. But nevertheless, there is that obligation that you need to participate.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Reagan. Cheryl, when I think about the word philanthropist, as Reagan has talked about it, you to me are the image of a philanthropist. You have these enormous gifts and you just freely give them to the community. Cheryl, talk a little bit about, you brought up, the cultural differences around doing this work and how the dominant culture or the white culture has a expectation that you'll have boards and systems and accountants, and the African-American culture approaches philanthropy perhaps a bit differently, more from a familial approach and all of that. How has the racial reckoning of the last several months, how has having a woman of color be the vice president-elect of our nation, how has that affected you, changed your thinking? Just share a little bit about your thoughts on the last 8 months and what we've been through, and hopefully the good that will come out of it all.
Tony, thank you. That's a great question. In July, I was at the White House and I was in a session with Kamala Harris, and it was with a couple of people who had lost Ahmaud Arbery's mom, all of these different people. And I've never been a political person, but when all of this Black Lives Matter and everything came out, I decided that I wanted to do an event, a rally to bring everything together. And I called it Love Out Loud, where I just wanted all of our people to come together at the city. And I literally thought about 100, 200 people were going to come and show up. And we had 3,500 people show up at City Hall. It was crazy. But my first immediate response scared me because some of my donors emailed and said, I will never give a effing dime to you again. And I was like, oh my God. I went back and read the email that I sent out, and I accidentally had hit Minnie's as well as mine. So my donors saw it. It wasn't intentional. And so I said, so you're mad at me because I said, let's love out loud. And that shook me to my core. A lot of people told me you shouldn't get involved. You shouldn't do this. And the only thing I was intentionally trying to do was bring us together. And in Plano, where it's suburban America, what I found out was a lot of my Caucasian donors, they didn't have any idea of what to do. And so I was kind of like the leader. And I want to speak on what Julia and Reagan were just talking about, the beauty of being able to give back, not even if you don't have a lot, but to be able to have that foundation. My foundation growing up, when my father passed away, when I walked over to his house, we were all about giving, but we didn't have a lot, but whatever we had, we gave. Let me tell you, the gift that I got from my father and that I have on my desk, when I walked in the house, everyone had took my dad's ties and everything to his name. And I got a bottle that's empty and it said signature. It was his cologne. And I picked up this bottle in anger at first. And then I heard my dad say, what signature will you leave? I'm gone, daughter, but what will you leave? I picked up this bottle and I carry it with me. I speak about it. It's on my desk when people walk in. And so the signature that I feel that the world has balanced is that your fathers left you something. My father left me the gift of doing the work. Your fathers left you the gift of being able to fund someone that doing the work. And I just think that's amazing how God has life balanced out, that I may do the work and you may have the funds to allow me to do it. And so when COVID hit, so what Florencia said, I walked into a lot of meetings where I knew that I was not going to get the grants or funding because I was the only African-American in the room. I walked into meetings where a woman literally said, I hate you. And these are executive directors. And she said, because you're coming in and taking some of the funding that I would get for feeding the hungry, because now you've joined the pot. And so I had to do some soul searching and saying, is this something I really want to do? And everything within me and all of my ancestors behind me just kept saying, go, go. And I went at the expense of my own family. Before Tony came in, I used my own personal funds to where my car was repossessed, everything, because I was that passionate. Now learning how the foundation needs to be set, I can now educate people, and especially African-American people, and saying, this is what you need. And if you have your foundation set up right, there are people who will give to your foundations. And we didn't know that in our community. All we knew was grandma said, go take some food down 2 houses down, or take a coat here. We had philanthropy all in the neighborhood. I grew up in Dallas, Oak Cliff, Bonneville, and Prosperity, and nobody's rich on Prosperity Street. Let me just tell you. But we had people rich in love, people rich with hearts, and we all gave, but we didn't even know how to spell the word philanthropy. We just knew that our neighbors needed it, and that's how we did. But if you go in there and knock on some of those ancestors' doors, there were a lot of rich philanthropies in the city of Dallas that gave everything. In my opinion, if I got $1 million and I give out 100,000, I gave 10%. If I had $100 and gave out $10, I gave 10%. So in my opinion, whatever level you're giving on, if you're giving the same amount, you're just as good as those with the millions. And that's what I had to learn. And so when you talk about, do you give a lot or do you give a little to a foundation? I've learned this: what is for me is for me. And I will say to you that when I received a little, I wrote a thank you letter to those who would donate $1. When I received 100,000, I wrote that same thank you letter. And I will tell you that if it can make a big impact, I would tell people, give it all to this organization so that their task and their program can be done, and I'll get mine. That's how I always viewed it, but I was always grateful. But it's been a long battle since COVID, and I still think it's better now because people are actively looking for minorities that they can donate to, and now they're calling me in to even speak about it from corporations. So I'm grateful to be a voice.
Thank you. Julia, how has the last several months changed your thinking, or has it? Have you thought differently about things over the course of the last year?
These last few months have been so hard for so many people. Loss of housing, loss of income, isolation from family and friends, not to mention those grappling with the effects of the virus itself. With my work, I want to hear that organizations we support are able to transition to providing services remotely or virtually. Some of the mental health services organizations we work with have transitioned successfully to working with clients remotely. Girls Inc., an organization that is another favorite of mine personally, pivoted to virtual and remote engagement and mentoring. And as I mentioned, some of the efforts Rosewood Corporation took looking into its own business entities to help with the community. And with my work on the foundation and in my own personal life, I strive to approach everything from a place of empathy and with the desire to discover what I don't know and what I can take away from something for my own education and evolution. I've taken steps. I still have more to do. Of course, I always will. But to not just think of myself as non-racist, but to actually put in some work to be anti-racist. I've made more of an effort to read books about race and written by people of color. I understand that the America I live in is not the same America everybody else experiences. And I hope and I pray that in my own personal life and in my influence with the Rosewood Foundation, I can have a positive impact on our community and on our planet.
Thank you, Julia. Reagan, how have you been changed by these last several months, or how is your thinking different than it was before?
Well, you know, I don't know how to answer that because these last several months have been tumultuous on all levels in our family. I think, you know, I go back to doing what you can and valuing the people around you. I think one of the things that I've learned is that I am slightly pickier about the people that I surround myself with, even if it's virtual, because I only want to be with people who share the values that I do about the worth of other people and inclusion and anti-racism. And it's been interesting to me, particularly during the whole political maelstrom we've been through, how many of people who I might have thought were in my circles, I actually disagree with strongly, and have been given the opportunity, because of COVID, to say, well, you know, I respect them and they're entitled to their opinion, but I only want to be around people who are cognizant of what's happening in the world and willing to do whatever we can to change the world we live in to make it a better place for everyone. You know, it's a fine place for those of us that are comfortable. And I keep reminding my children that COVID is an inconvenience to us, and that's all. But to so many other people, it is much more than an inconvenience. And so I think what has changed is just I have raised the value of surrounding myself with people who are willing to engage and do the work, and I have less patience for those who don't.
Thank you for sharing that. Florencia, how about you? How have you been changed?
COVID has changed so many things, but one of the things that for us as an organization, it brought forward some of the issues that the Concilio has been working on for decades. The health disparities that exist. You can't, we used to have to build a case for that before COVID. Now with COVID, Hispanics and African Americans have been hit disproportionately. It cannot be ignored. It's in our face. It's in the data. We see it. Education, the education gap. We've been working on that. And, I am afraid that the achievement gap, that the education of Latino and African American children, that gap is going to grow even more because of COVID and because of the technology gap that exists. And then parental engagement. We had so many people that didn't want to fund us because they want to fund just children. Well, now that children are working from home and parents that have a college education and have all the resources in the world are struggling with their little ones. Imagine what, parents who've lost their jobs, they don't have internet, they don't have money to pay the rent, and they entered this crisis already in a crisis, has exacerbated just and rocked even more the status of our families. So what we've learned as an organization is that compartmentalizing our work and just having institutes that parents participate and go through are not enough right now during COVID. So we are really trying to help families in all areas of their lives and helping them financially. We're also helping them with basic needs. We're dropping off supplies. We're helping them. We created a new curriculum where it's a basic computer literacy skills to help parents learn how to use Zoom, how to set up an email account, how to use an email account, all those things that we take for granted. Many of the parents that we work with, they don't even have a computer. They just heard of those things, but now they're doing it. So for us, it's about going that extra mile and helping the families to be able to make it through on the other side. And I want to add to the conversation that was being said earlier. One of the things that I learned from my parents about giving is that most of us give out of our excess. And my parents didn't give out of their excess. My parents gave out of sacrifice. I remember one time I was about 7 years old. I remember we didn't have enough food to eat. And all we had was a pot of beans. And we didn't even have a whole stack of tortillas. We had like half what we usually had. And then we had some friends that came over. And my mom said, yeah, why don't you stay for dinner? I looked at her and I was so upset. It's like, do you not see what we have? So what this woman did is she went into the kitchen, added more water to the pot of beans and shared what we had. And then after they left, she says, did you miss anything? And she says, the more you give, and if you give when you don't have, that's when it matters. That's when it matters the most. And, God will bless you if you bless others. And so I think, this conversation about legacy and where we are with COVID and 2020 has been very difficult for all of us, for everyone. But I think if we all just try to, give not just of our excess, but really dig into how we can help others more, I think we're going to get through this.
Florencia, thank you for those words. I want to thank the entire panel. You have been inspiring not only with your words and the conversation today, but with the work that you undertake every day. So thank you. And thank you for joining me in this conversation and leading the community in this conversation.
Thank you, Tony.
You're most welcome. I want to thank our series sponsors, Something Good Consulting, the law firm of Wright Knatzer, Forward DFW, and especially our presenting sponsor, Morgan Stanley. As we approach the holiday of Thanksgiving, national and family tradition will force us to turn, even for the briefest of hours, to gratitude and to reflection. There is no denying that racism and gender inequality are in fact woven into the very fabric of this nation. But as we have been doing in this series of community conversations, our hope is that we each take some time to reflect on our place in this moment, dig deep to find the power and treasures in our own story, and turn them out from our story to the benefit of others. When we do this work together, we are renewed day by day, and there is no end to the good that can be accomplished. I'm grateful to you women for sharing your story, your inspiration with us today. Thank you, and I hope to see the audience back for our next session in December. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.